Alright, so I have over 100 hours in this game, and I just want to put out this little disclaimer that I really like this game. I play it all the time on my stream, and so I'll have clips of it from my stream in the background. So basically, Slay the Spire is an indie roguelite card game in development by Megacrit, currently in early access on Steam for like 15 bucks. If you ever played Dungeon Run or Monster Hunt from Hearthstone, this game is very similar to those. In this video, I'll be going over various aspects of the game and also giving my opinions and criticisms of those aspects. I'll start with the basic structure and mechanics of the game, then introduce you to the classes and their archetypes. I'll then go into how you can progress and unlock new things in this game, and lastly, I'll give my views on how the development of this game is going along. Slay the Spire is a roguelite card game. What does that mean? It means that every time you play this game, it creates an independent run that has the same objective as every other run. Being a card game, you and your opponent, being the monsters in this game, take turns performing actions to win the battle. Alright, so how do you play? At the beginning of the game, you select a class and are given a base deck and a starting relic, both of these being unique to your class. Then you begin your journey up the Spire, climbing 50 floors and 3 bosses until you beat the game. Along the way, you fight monsters, explore random events, and visit shops. Each time you beat monsters, you can get some gold and can select one card from a group of 3 to add to your deck. These cards will stay in your deck for the rest of your run unless you decide to remove them through the opportunities given to you throughout your run. You can spend your gold at shops to remove cards from your deck and buy cards, potions, and relics. So you want to fight some monsters. Lucky for you, that's kind of the point of the game. Honestly, there's a lot to know about the mechanics of this game, but they're pretty self-explanatory and the game does a good job of covering what they do in game. You begin each turn with 3 energy and drawing 5 cards. Each card has a cost associated with it, and that amount is how much energy you need to spend to play the card. Some cards help you do damage, some cards help you survive damage, and some cards can help you draw or generate more cards. There's buffs and debuffs, statuses, and curses. What you need to know is that buffs and debuffs affect how well you can attack and how well you can defend. Statuses and curses are cards that make it more difficult for you to perform the actions you want to perform. So what do I think of the mechanics of this game? I love the simplicity yet wide range of the mechanics and the ways that it allows for a large pool of cards that not only do damage, but also buff yourself up and apply debuffs to your enemies. The cards also interact with each other in ways that provide higher depth of gameplay and deck creation. Not only do I like how the mechanics of the game affects the way the cards work, but they also allow for the monsters in the game to have a wide variety of the actions that they take. Not only that, but the buffs and debuffs that the monsters do are thematic and establish clear identities for each and every monster in the game, which I feel establishes a fantastic atmosphere for the game. So I've mentioned relics a couple times already without really explaining them, so now I'll get right to it. Relics are collectibles that you can obtain along your climb up the Spire through events, shops, and fighting elite enemies and bosses. There are currently 159 relics minus the starting relics and are separated on the following rarities: common, uncommon, rare, and boss relics, separated loosely on how much they affect your gameplay and the decisions that you'll be making across your run. For example, if you get the relic that lets you start off each battle with 1 strength, the differences in the decisions that you'll be making aren't really that big. Sure, there are some niche examples where 1 strength can mean all the difference, but if you compare it to a boss relic which can let you die and revive once or give you an extra energy to use each turn, these have a far greater impact on how you decide what to do and why you're doing it. In my opinion, relics are what makes this game. They're so unique and all of them affect the gameplay in some way. They all can alter essentially the value of each card, and as such it provides a level of compatibility and optimization between cards, relics, and the strategies of each archetype of deck that makes each run up the Spire a new experience. Receiving relics randomly and at the same time receiving your cards semi-randomly too means that no run is the same and you can always experiment with new combinations. Because there's so many relics and they're always adding more and more relics, there's really a lack of consistency when it comes to receiving any one relic. It's definitely the point of a roguelite game not to be able to guarantee any one outcome, but you'd probably hope to get your favorite relic at least every few runs. But when it comes to the rare relics, it doesn't happen often at all. Another thing I like about this game is that it has a big emphasis on planning. First thing that happens, bam, you're hit with talking with this big ass whale. The whale gives you 4 choices, 2 good ones, 1 risk for a reward, and another is losing your starting relic for a random boss relic. These choices affect which path you take down the map. Do you get gold and try to hit the nearest shop, or do you lose some max HP to get a rare relic? Once you get into the game, not only do you have to worry about each turn you play, but you also have to take into account for your next turns as well as your next battles. How much damage can you afford to take? How much damage can you do next turn? Which cards will help you most in your next fights, and which cards will help you most against the boss? This also goes for things outside of battling, most notably shops and random events. When you're at a shop, you could spend your money to remove a card from your deck, or maybe you want that extra cash to buy a better relic, like investing into future battles, whereas buying potions may help you survive your immediate battle. When it comes to events, most events have an element of balancing risk and reward. Do you want to take this curse for a relic, or would you rather just get a heal instead? Lastly, the choices of each card you're given at the end of a battle has a big impact on how you shape your deck going forwards. Do you want to chase after an archetype or settle for the best choice of card you're given, even if it doesn't suit the type of deck you're planning to build? Do you want to shape your deck around a good card you already have, or build your deck so that it becomes incredible once you get that one relic or card you were hoping for? So what archetypes are there to choose from? Which ones are worth it and which ones fall flat? First things first, you need to know the classes and what they're known for. The 3 classes currently available are the Ironclad, essentially the warrior class, the Silent, the rogue/assassin class, and the Defect, the mage class. The Ironclad focuses on the basics, and is the first class unlocked for you once you buy the game. You can get through the game focusing primarily on strength or defense, as Ironclad has amazing cards that support these types of decks. Once you finish a run with the Ironclad, the Silent gets unlocked. It has more focus on the more complex mechanics of the game, most notably discarding, simple card generation, and poison. Once you finish a run with the Silent, the last class, the Defect, is unlocked. It has a focus on complex card generation, card seeking from the deck and the discard pile, as well as introducing its own mechanics, its orbs. These orbs have passive abilities that activate at the end of each turn and can get replaced by creating more orbs. When the orbs are replaced or activated, otherwise known as evoked, they have a secondary effect, thus rewarding orb generation and planning around what effects will happen around the generation of your orbs. So knowing the basics for each of the classes, I'll give you my 3 favorite archetypes for each class. Before that, however, I have a couple big criticisms for this game in this regard. First, the archetypes this game offers are not balanced in how easily they can confront the enemies in this game, and choosing a certain archetype and even achieving a good deck around the archetype can still leave you with unwinnable encounters when a boss or elite can completely shut down your deck. An example of this is the Gremlin Knob, which basically forces you to all in on offensive options, leaving slower defensive decks to quickly spiral into an unwinnable matchup. Another example is one of the last bosses, Time Eater, who punishes decks that generate cards, as it caps you out at playing 12 cards a turn, which for some archetypes simply isn't enough for their game plans. The other criticism I have is directed more towards the Defect than the other 2, but it's still kind of applicable to them. For the first few floors, adding strong standalone cards is really important for surviving your encounters, but that's something that the Defect in general is lacking. Being offered cards like Cool Headed, Force Field, Steam Barrier, and Blizzard early on really guts the class's ability to stand up against its early encounters. These 2 issues are some of the largest issues I have with this game, but honestly they aren't nearly bad enough to ruin the game for me, unlike the criticisms of a game like Monster Hunter World. Please watch that video. Anyways, here are the 3 classes and the 3 archetypes for each. Ironclad is the basics class. It focuses on simple buffs and debuffs and occasionally wanders into the realm of high card and mana efficiency through the use of exhausting cards. My personal favorite archetype is the balls to the wall strength deck, using Demon Form, Flex, Spot Weakness, and Limit Break to get ridiculous amounts of strength in a few turns. Once you start hitting over 20 strength, cards like Heavy Blade and Pummel become so insane it'll one-shot bosses, which is just so satisfying. Oh, just kidding. Boom, one-shot this guy on turn 2, let's go. For the smarter players, there's the high block build, using Barricade, Impervious, and Entrench to get crazy amounts of block, and using Body Slam to translate high block to high power. Lastly, the exhaust build, which I don't think in general is very good, but if you get really lucky, you can use Dead Branch and Corruption to get the most clown fiesta but hilarious turns in the game. Ironclad is a great base class that's a fantastic introduction to Slay the Spire. Before unlocking the Defect, all I played was the Ironclad, so I know that even with a more basic class, there's still so much content to explore in one character. The Silent is the next class on the list. It has a focus on discarding cards for high value, creating cards for high card volume and power synergies, and stacking poison upon poison on her enemies. The Silent has a lot of relic synergies present in each deck, which I'll add on to each archetype's explanation too. First, the discard archetype is supported mainly through Acrobatics and Tactician, taking advantage of Reflex, Eviscerate, and Sneaky Strike to get out lots of damage and lots of cards out in any turn. This archetype is supported by 2 rare relics and 1 boss relic, in Tingsha, Tough Bandages, and Hovering Kite. But the relics are not pivotal for the deck's success. The next deck, the Shiv deck, in my opinion is much more reliant on relics, most notably Kunai, but is supported well from Shuriken and Wristblade. It takes advantage of cards that can reliably generate zero-cost attacks called Shivs every turn, and with Kunai, maintain your health through massive dexterity boosts and high-value defensive cards. This deck is my favorite deck, as queuing up tons of Shivs in one turn with the added animations and effects of powers Envenom, 1000 Cuts, and Afterimage, leaving you feeling like the art for Infinite Blades. The last deck, and in my opinion the most consistent deck, uses cards that can consistently inflict poison on your enemies. This uses cards like Poison Stab, Catalyst, Corpse Explosion, and Noxious Fumes, as well as Relics Snecko Skull and Twisted Funnel for consistent and quick stacking of poison. I like this deck because it's the one that relies the least on luck, as it allows for flexibility between applying poison and defending against your enemies. The last class, and definitely my favorite class, is the Defect. The Defect is the most complex class when it comes to game mechanics. Not only is there the addition of orbs, which is quite a complex system itself, it also has an emphasis on card generation and seeking cards from both your deck as well as from your discard pile. These mechanics for the class means an added emphasis on planning as well as knowing the win conditions and defensive options for your deck. The three archetypes I'll talk about are Dark, Zeros, and Powers. Dark is an archetype I've been going into only recently. The goal of this deck is simple: channel Dark Orbs and trigger them enough with Loop, Darkness, and Recursion to store up massive amounts of damage in short amount of time. This archetype is particularly good against bosses, so from what I've heard from the Slay the Spire subreddit, this archetype is likely the best archetype for clearing runs. I haven't tried it much because I love this next archetype way too much. Zeros. This deck is all about 2 cards and finding those 2 cards. All for one, and Claw. It also has support from a bunch of other zero-cost cards that help to sustain a consistent train of attacks flowing to your enemy, whether it be Turbo to get more mana, Overclock and Skim to get more cards, or Seek and a Hologram to retrieve your all-for-one when you need it most. This deck is my favorite Defect archetype as well as my favorite archetype in the game. It's similar to the Silence Shiv build, but with the added bonus of feeling like a god whenever you play it. Lastly, the archetype that I first played and liked for the Defect was the Powers build. This build relies primarily on Heat Sinks, Storm, and Creative AI to take advantage of the values that Powers have at the expense of having little immediate effect upon playing them. It's a really slow deck, but is really strong once it gets rolling. Plus, it is really fun if you can afford to fit in an Echo Form or 2 in there. All in all, I think the highlight of this game is the 3 classes that they offer and the fun and unique identities of each of them. The different cards and relics offered to them and the fantastically fun archetypes for each of the classes makes each run unique in what could be seen as a repetitive game in its roguelite nature. Now, how else can you progress in this game where each run is the same? I've already talked about how playing a run with the first couple classes will unlock the other classes. With each class, the more you play them, the more unlocks are available to you. Leveling up classes unlocks you more cards and more relics that'll be available to you in your next runs. Now here's the crowning achievement of replayability in Slay the Spire: Ascension Mode. 20 different difficulty levels only unlocked after you win a run of the previous highest difficulty available to you. These spikes in difficulty can range from something as simple as normal enemies being a little harder to having to face a second final boss on the last floor. Each level of Ascension retains all the challenges of the levels before it, so by the time you reach Ascension 20, you're playing an entirely different game from vanilla Slay the Spire. The last thing I'm going to touch base on is the support that the devs have for the game and its community. I haven't been subscribed to the subreddit for that long, so I'm not 100% caught up on how the devs communicate directly with their player base. But what I will say is that I'm very impressed with the level of dedication that the devs have for improving their game. But every 2 or 3 updates usually are large enough to have new content like relics and balance updates for their cards. The devs are vocal, communicative, and also proudly display community content. Because of this, I choose to believe that the devs working over at Megacrit are working their hardest to make this game the best possible game it can be. Slay the Spire is an indie roguelite card game currently in early access. It's a well-crafted game with an emphasis on planning and smart play. It has 3 unique classes with individual identities and deck archetypes, all of which are at least a little viable and still fun as hell. It has an incredibly long progression system, which allows both for replayability and progression in the game. With its high skill cap, only the best players can climb to the top of Ascension, allowing room for every player to improve their knowledge and decision-making skills. It has a fantastic community and great developer developer support. As an indie title with a unique premise, this game has grown from a small title to one of the best indie games currently available for Steam. Because of these reasons and the so few criticisms I have against the game, Slay the Spire has climbed to the top as one of my favorite games to play to pass the time. Thanks for watching. I wanted to make another video after my Monster Hunter video, but I couldn't find a suitable topic. I was going to review Scum, but I had such a poor experience with my first playthrough of the game, I refunded it. I thought I might as well review Slay the Spire because it was like 70% of my stream, and I think this game is incredible. Honestly, I didn't expect this review slash walkthrough to be so long, but I just wanted to fully flesh out all the cool aspects of this game, especially the classes. Thanks for sticking around the whole video. I really appreciate the support, and I'm hoping to make more of these in the future. If you want to drop a suggestion, I'd totally be down to trying some new things on stream. Speaking of, please follow my stream and maybe give my YouTube channel a sub and this video a like. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.